Hello, this is Act with Miha. My channel is all about my acting interpretations of people and scenarios. I am not a psychologist. I am not a mental professional. I am just a mere acting teacher. I keep saying that, and it seems like some people don't hear it. They keep asking me, how do I know what I'm talking about and why am I talking? I'm talking, first of all, because I think there is a misconception when it comes to understanding the creative process behind acting. Most understand acting to be pretend. You pretend to be a character. You pretend to be in a fictional scenario. And that is completely wrong. It is quite the opposite. Acting is about experiencing truthful emotions in the fictional scenarios. I have never watched a trial, and I have seen many of them. I am addicted to true crime, but I have never seen a trial like the Lindsay Clancy trial. The defense case storyline is so fictional to me, and it lacks the evidence to support it, that if I saw it on stage, I would not believe it. I would be one of those few members of the audience who would probably walk out during intermission. Smart audiences get it and demand more when they watch actors. So why are we so engaged in the defense's presentation of their case, and more specifically in the main character, the principal role of this trial, which in my opinion is Kevin Reddington? I talked about him before, and I said that I recognize some of the acting methods that he is using in the courtroom. And some were asking me, why would I say that? They were saying that's not true, what I am saying, because he is the most human being in that courtroom. Can't I see how much he cares about his client, the defendant, Lindsay Clancy? And yes, you are correct. I see all of the things that I just mentioned, but that is what makes him a great actor. The fact that he is a very self-aware human being. He understands his repertoire of his humanity. He understands which of his personalities to bring out at what point in the trial with which of the witnesses. His strategies, his tactics change due to who the defense is talking to as a witness, or who the defense is cross-examining. He knows this game so well, and he's one of the best storyteller lawyers that I have seen. As in acting, we are engaged in our everyday life. When we meet people, we find ourselves in different scenarios, in conversations with different characters in our everyday life. Some of those characters, some of those people in our lives, they are more interesting than the others. The others could be a little bit more boring, lame, monotone. They're not as presentational. They're not outgoing. They're afraid to show their true, full selves as human beings. They're more protected of who they are. And that, in this case of Lindsay Clancy, is the prosecution in my view. I wrote a couple of things that I want to go over before the closing argument tomorrow. Yes, today was the last day, day 21st, I believe. And this is what I wrote. Defense plays dirty. Prosecution plays politely. In acting, dirty play wins. Reddington was the most successful. The judge even became a secondary role in his own courtroom. And so do the witnesses. They get small and become weak when Kevin Reddington is in charge. To be a great whole person. 1 second, I lost it. Let me start a little bit before that. As an acting teacher, I watched this trial through the lens of performance, objectives, character, timing, and audience psychology transformed into behavior. And when I talk about psychology transformed into behavior, I am talking about it from an acting perspective. What strikes me is the contrast. The defense seems willing to take risks. Kevin Reddington interrupts, provokes, challenges, and dominates the stage, while the prosecution, the two prosecutors, often appear more restrained and polite. But in my opinion, in acting, the person who takes ownership of the stage, in this case of the courtroom, often becomes the center of the story. Witnesses can even become supporting characters to that main character. Evidence can lose its emotional impact if the storytelling around the evidence becomes too predictable, as is the case with the two prosecutors. But I have to say, one of them is better than the other one. I forget their names. Why don't I know their names? And that is what concerns me here. And that is what concerns me about the verdict and how the jurors are able to make a just deliberation after the closing argument tomorrow. Reddington appears to be playing every part in his own production. He controls the rhythm, he reacts in the moment, he uses interruptions, sighs. Did you see him today with the FBI doctor? Come on, come on. Hello, hello. Whenever the witness was saying something that he wasn't serving his narration of his case. Come on, hello. Or he turns around from the witnesses that he is talking to show the jurors, which in this case, to me, they are as an audience. He cuts the witnesses off. His objective seems very clear to me: to control, to win the scene, as we do in acting, and to intimidate. The more bold you are, the more risk taker you are, the more you will engage the audience and you will get them to be on your side. He reminds me of an actor who knows exactly how to work an audience. Great actors can make audiences root for characters, even when the audience knows they are watching a performance. And why do we believe those actors to be those characters? Because they engage us so much with their humanity. They bring their different humanity, their entire repertoire, like I talked about in the beginning of the video. So they show us all of who they are, which we as people in everyday life are afraid to do. But while sitting as the audience member and watching those great actors do all of that, we feel as if we're kind of liberating ourselves. And we're doing it, sitting down and watching a movie or watching a show on TV. And that is why Reddington is so engaging. No matter that he can turn into a bully, no matter that he's aggressive, no matter that he makes all these gestures, he throws papers on his desk, we root for the villain. We root for the person who is going to show us who they are fully without reservations, because many of us are very introverted, many of us are very shy. We hold back, we put a facade, we put the public persona on. So we relate to those who are able to open themselves up and let us all see who they are. Because, like I said before, in that way, we can also identify with those things inside of ourselves that we all possess, but we are afraid to let out. We don't want to expose. That is the power of theatrical presence. And it takes a lot of courage, it takes a lot of guts, it takes a lot of boldness to be able to do it. In acting, it requires a lot of training, and it's ongoing training. It never stops, because we will never come to an end of our discoveries of what surprises we may have within that can be revealed. It's an ongoing process that ends at the end of our lives. It doesn't end before. The defense, Mr. Reddington, seems to understand something that the prosecution sometimes forgets, in my opinion. Winning an audience requires risk. If the fight is truly about life or death, that's how you have to play as a public person, a lawyer, an actor, a doctor who has to give a speech and has to convey his medical idea. You have to do it as if it matters to you, as if it's the most important thing. You're going for it. And then the audience or the jurors, I believe, will be engaged. On the other hand, the prosecution, and I am rooting for the prosecution, I am rooting for them because they are the voice of the three beautiful babies, DAWSON, CORA, and CALLAN. I'm rooting for them to surprise me tomorrow. I am hoping they will surprise me tomorrow, and they will come with something new from within to bring to that courtroom that I have not seen from them yet. I don't understand what made them hold back on so many occasions. I think one of the prosecutors had one moment, which to me was the moment of the entire trial for her, when she was, I believe, cross-examining La Posata, the cuckoo doctor who was on Zoom. She was the witness for the defense, but Reddington is even a hypocrite, because he wasn't complaining about some of his witnesses being on television. Do you remember how he was pounding the idea to the jurors that if Lindsay Clancy would have been able to physically see those doctors, those incompetent doctors, in an office face to face, maybe they would have diagnosed that she has this so-called psychosis. But when it comes to the witnesses that he brought, the ones that were still on television, and he, as he likes to say, he says, oh, those witnesses on television, did you see Lindsay Clancy on television? As if to pretend that he's doesn't know too much about technology. That's another great acting method. I'm gonna let you know that I'm not too much into this subject, so don't think of me as being the smartest person in the room, when he knows he's just playing a role by saying that, to get the empathy from the jurors, whom I also not be as technical as he is. There wasn't a forceful reaction to anything that was going on, in my opinion, from the prosecution. I feel that their comportment throughout the whole trial was not a fight for those three beautiful kids, truly, personally. Not because they're not doing that, they're doing it with the evidence, but I feel that the evidence is getting lost in the theatrics of the actor, lawyer, Kevin Reddington. So I wish that I'm wrong about these observations. I truly do wish that I'm wrong. And I wish that the jurors, having been presently physically in the courtroom, they're seeing the whole trial in a different way. But I don't know. I'm very scared that the better lawyer, actor, storyteller will win, as he seems to be continuing to win, with the viewers, with the journalists, with professionals, YouTubers I watch and I admired for such a long time, smart people, and now they're all believing the psychosis. They're believing the one episode psychosis, and they're believing the one time on a loop male voice that now Lindsay Clancy told the last doctor, the FBI doctor, she only heard one time after she hung up with Patrick Clancy when he called her from the pharmacy. She was at the refrigerator. She opened the refrigerator. She spoke to Patrick. The voice, this external voice, a male voice, made sure it's a male voice, it's external. It's not internal, because if it's internal, then it wouldn't be psychosis. It could be her own thoughts telling her to do the most tragic things that she committed. But if it's an external voice and a male voice, then it couldn't be heard. It couldn't be her voice. It would mean that she was in a psychosis and she didn't know what she did to her children was right. That's what the defense's case is all about. So I was thinking, if I were to work with actors on a character, and the actor, we were reading a script, and the script happens to be about this character, Lindsay Clancy, let's just say she's a character in that play, and we would read exactly what I've just described about this male voice. I and the actors I was working with would have the question next: what did the voice sound like? Which I believe the doctor asked her, the FBI doctor. And she said it was very consistent. It was very commanding. It was saying the same thing. It was saying, this is your last chance. Go, the children. And then yourself. Go unalive the children and then unalive yourself on a loop for 17 minutes, 17 to 20 minutes. And it was the same voice. The prosecution was polite. If I were the prosecution, if I were acting as a prosecution, as a prosecutor, my next question would have been, did the voice have an accent? What did the voice sound like? Did it sound like someone you recognize? Was it so external that it came from another planet? I wouldn't have stayed so polite to not bring some risk-taking questions to that, in my opinion, fabrication of the male voice on a loop for 17 minutes. And then the voice stops. When she goes up to the bedroom, the voice stops. All of a sudden, stop. Don't you have any other questions that you want to ask as the prosecution? I would have, if I had the time they had to prepare for this case. And of course, I want them to win. Of course, I want this woman to spend the rest of her life in prison for what she did. Because I do not believe, from what I am seeing, that their case, the defense's case, is real. It is more than fictional story, in my opinion. It is fabricated beyond fiction. The imagination of Kevin Reddington is very rich. Do you remember I told you in the beginning? He's one of those people who knows what he's capable of. He's very comfortable in his skin. So his imagination is very, 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 very rich. I'm sure that he came up with a voice. I would have even said, I don't know if that's allowed. I don't know if that's allowed in court, but I'm speaking from an acting perspective as an acting teacher. But I would have said, did it sound like the defense attorney? Did it sound like Mr. Reddington? Don't call him attorney, call him Mr. Reddington. The same way that he addressed the prosecutor by her name without her title of the lawyer. And she even stopped him and said, lawyer, attorney so-and-so, attorney so-and-so, attorney Jennifer something. I don't know her name. And he went back and said, Jennifer, blah, blah, blah. And then she had to say it again. And then the judge had to intervene because he is playing the entire spectacle, almost like he's doing a monologue. And he's got the judge to support them. He's got the other characters, even the two lady attorneys, DAs. They're supporting of his starring role. They're almost like extras in some cases during the trial. And that is what makes me sad. Most importantly, the saddest part to me is that justice will not be served for these beautiful children. I hope I'm wrong. I hope I'm wrong. But another thing that really bothers me is to see how many people in our society can't even distinguish, can't even realize, they don't recognize that that is why they are believing the defense's case. They're believing it because it's as if they're watching a show. And the greatest lawyer in this farcical show to me, if it weren't so tragic, that the defense is putting on, Mr. Reddington is the best actor of them all in this trial. And everybody watching, all the viewers, all the journalists, all the people that I mentioned before that I was so respecting for so many years, are taking on his storyline. No matter how fabricated, no matter how out of this world it is, it wouldn't even be believed in acting. Smart audience would be walking out. And I just hope and pray that those jurors are part of a smart audience. I know I'm not saying they would walk out, but they would see through the theatrics. They would see through the trying so hard and actually being successful of getting the fabrication of the voice of the psychosis one time. The way that she says to the FBI doctor that she brought the 3 children down in the basement is heartbreaking. I don't even believe that's how she did it. She says she doesn't remember. That's another added fabricated fact, event, fictional event. I wonder who came up with all of this. I think it was Reddington. I think his imaginative capacities beyond normal. I think he probably, in another life, he was an actor, one of the greatest actors, in my opinion. Male voice fabrication. Doesn't remember exactly the way that she brought the children down in the basement from the house. Wanted to unalive herself, but couldn't do it. But yet she injured herself. And I think that was by accident. I think her plan was to try to slide down, especially knowing that she was a gymnastic person, knowing that she was a cheerleader, knowing she was running marathons, knowing. For her to come out from the second floor, which wasn't even very high, it would have been like me walking, because I'm not in form, physical form. But I think that's where God intervened. I shouldn't say God. Oh my God, how dare do I say God? How dare does the defense ask a witness about considering what this woman did to her children to be a mortal sin? How dare? When she was the one, Lindsay Clancy was the one who said that the male voice was saying to her, telling her about the kids, go to God, go to God. Then they can ask the same question. Everything the defense and Lindsay Clancy do and did during the 21 episodes of this tragic show, farcical if it wasn't such a tragedy, they get away with. But when the prosecution comes and they try to be a little bit risk takers and they want to be a little bit bold, how dare they? How dare they ask such a question? And instead of them continuing to fight and standing up and have a response, they back down. They retreat because they're not comfortable, in my opinion, in their skin. And I think that's because they're not comfortable in the clarity of their case. The storytelling is of such importance. And it goes back to what I was saying. It doesn't matter how fictional it is. If you believe in it, the way that Reddington presents himself to believe in it and goes for it with every breath, with everything in his body, mind, and soul to defend this woman, he makes it seem real to the viewers. And that is what great actors do. The prosecution is not even clear because they're trying to stay somewhere in the middle. They're trying to stay neutral. When you're trying to stay neutral, that neutrality will never get you anywhere. You won't win, you won't lose. You'll be somewhere in between. But where is the excitement in that? Where is the excitement in it? People talk about actors having to go back into their life experiences and try to recall certain traumatic events from their life to be able to cry on cue, because the crying has to happen truthfully. Even though they're acting, the crying is truthful in the fictional scenario with that fictional character they are portraying. And people ask, is it good? Is it good for anybody to go back and relive those experiences? Yes, it is, in my opinion. You bring them to life. You bring them to light. You don't let them stay under, become putrid, because they will eat you. Of course, you do it in an environment that is safe. As actors, we have workshops, we have rehearsals, we have other people who are guiding us. But it takes a lot of work for actors to be able to be more truthful than real people are in everyday life. Actors learn from observing, watching real human beings in everyday life. They try to detect what seems true, what seems false, so they can take those observations and apply them to their acting. The actor's objective, the actor's goals are always to be as truthful as possible in the fictional scenarios, in their roles. It's the opposite of pretend. It's the opposite of pretend. Acting is living more truthfully than we dare to do in life, because we have the safety net of the script. So we know that we are in a safe environment. The script, the play, gives us the structure. Within that, we can be as free to go to all these places, to search in our imagination, bring it on top of our life experiences. It's like having keys, having notes for a musician, and then rearranging them for the type of character the actor is playing, or for the musician, the song that he's composing. But if you're like the prosecution, who's only using 2 keys, it would be the same thing as watching a pianist play the piano with 2 keys for 2 hours. Ding, 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 ding. No matter how brilliant we might think that musician is, we will not be able to watch him or her playing 2 keys for 2 hours. We would walk out. I hope the jurors recognize that it's the theatrics and they are being weaponized by the defense, attorney Kevin Reddington, And of course, he's going to do that. His goal is to get a not guilty for his client. So she doesn't have to spend the rest of her life in prison, but she can be in a psychiatric hospital, from what I'm hearing, not even for a long time. I just hope that the jurors can make the distinction and be able to put to the side the real evidence and not allow themselves to be taken the same way that the viewers are by the theatrics of the defense. I thought I was going to be able to get this across even more, but I'm not. In regard to acting and how people keep thinking that it has to do with pretending, and it's not. Another thing that bothers me, it doesn't bother me, but I know we would annoy an audience. The prosecution, one of the women, I don't know which one of the attorneys, I shouldn't call her a woman, one of the attorneys, every other sentence, she goes, And did you hear the voice? Did she say, did Miss Lindsay Clancy hear the voice? What did the voice say? Do you know how many people watch? Watch yourselves. Watch other people and see how many people talk like that. They have the They don't even know. They're not aware they're doing it. We have to become aware of what we're doing in acting, and then we have to work on it so we can have it at our disposal when we need it, but then also be able to control that so it doesn't become an annoyance to the audiences. That's what's so fantastic about acting, because it teaches us about our own humanity in such a way that is so detailed and so specific that it becomes universally understood. And for those people, because I've made some clips, some videos about her fake crying that she did in court when the court had to take a break because she made such a performance out of it. And people were saying to me that it was so real for them and they cried with her. There's nothing wrong that you have a different opinion and you believe that to be sincere. But if you took that first part to be something that moved you, okay, good. Then what would be the next thing that you would ask? If it was so sincere, her cry, because she was watching the most horrific details of what she did to her babies, that's when it happened. She said something through that performative fake cry. I believe she said, I can't do this, I can't do this. My mind goes, would she really say that? Would she really say that if she were sincere? Or would she probably cry out for her babies and say, I've loved them. What have I done? Oh my God, my babies. CORA, DAWSON, CALLAN. What have I done to my babies? This voice came to me. It was in my head. As soon as I finished talking to my husband, Patrick Clancy, he was at the pharmacy and I hung up and I was trying to get the nuggets out from the refrigerator, even though the stories were different from Patrick Clancy. So now I feel like the defense attorney is even using that because he's seeing what's happening outside and all the conspiracy theories around the husband. And now he's using that. He's brought that. He's observing what's happening outside with the supporters, with the conspirators, and he's bringing that to court. He's bringing that to court. He was saying something about Patrick Clancy when he gave an interview after one of the days when he left the court. And there was a journalist and he was asked by him, what do you make of the story of the FBI doctor saying that Lindsay Clancy started hearing the male voice in a Russian accent? Hello, Lindsay Clancy. I am a Russian accent male voice. And I am saying to you, this is your last chance. This is your last chance. No, 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 no. That's what I would do to try to figure out the character. I would even try to put myself in the character's shoes. Of course, not to do the tragic acts, but voice, huh? What was the voice like? Now Kevin Reddington is saying, I wouldn't believe if Patrick Clancy told me that it was snowing when there's a blizzard out. He said that outside the courtroom to one of the journalists because he's so aware of his surroundings. He's using his senses. That those are the basic methods. Those are the basic tools of acting. Our sensory, our senses, sensory work, which we use in everyday life. But then as actors, we have to retrain, we have to activate. So we don't just remain actors doing lines and walking on stage and pretending like so many things, like so many people think. Now he's turning against Patrick Clancy because he's aware of what's happening out in the world and he's using that. He's an observer. He's watching. He's watching. He knows what's going on. He knows that nowadays, trials are not just for the courtroom. They're all over the world being watched by audiences. So of course he's playing to the entire world. He's not just playing to the jurors. That's what a great actor does. If you have a person in the audience, you're not gonna let yourself just play to that audience when you know that you're being filmed. You're gonna play to the entire people who might see you, knowing that you're being filmed, and then the video is gonna be shared all over the world, you know. But not playing to them, not playing to them directly, but playing knowing inside of yourself that that's what you're doing. So he's very smart. Yeah, he's throwing Patrick Clancy under the bus because he saw that a lot of people are trying to do that. They're trying to, there's stupid conspiracy theory about him. I don't even want to get into it. That was another thing. Lindsay Clancy never cried after that cry during the trial. Why? Why did she never cry again? 2 days ago or yesterday, I believe it was the first time that she had a band in her hair. She had the hair away from her face. And there was very horrific evidence discussed about the moment that the so-called male voice, I'd like to think it was Russian. I don't know why, because I can do a Russian accent, I guess. I am Madame Popova. My name is Popova. Doesn't even sound like Russian. I sound like in between accents. My name is I am the greatest actress of them all. When I do an accent, my face has to go to one side. I am the greatest actress of them all. My name is Arkadina, and I am in love with my lover, Trigorin. Trigorin, why are you looking at Nina this way? What is the matter? Huh? Da. How did the prosecution miss so many moments that they could have made so much more alive for those jurors? Did she tell you how she brought the babies down? Yes, the first one that was brought down was DAWSON. She brought DAWSON. How? Did she say how she brought him down? She said that she can't remember. Keep on pushing. Keep on pushing. Stay with the same moment. Don't go on to the next beat in acting if you haven't already achieved an impactful moment for the jurors. Is it possible in this case that she doesn't remember? Could she have grabbed him by the hand? Did she carry little Dawson? What are the possibilities? What does that mean, doctor? The second was CORA, the 5-year-old, the first child, the oldest. And the last was the baby, CALLAN. I don't even believe that. I don't believe that. I think she remembers every moment specifically. And I think this fabrication of not remembering, like I said, came from Reddington to play into the psychosis, to make her less of a monster, seem less of a monster. That's my opinion. These are all my opinions from my acting understanding and from my acting perspective. What was going on around that situation? Okay, you're afraid to ask any more questions because you don't want the witness to say something that's going to play into the defense's fabricated narrative. But ask about what was happening in the house. Where exactly did she say she brought her from? The bedroom. What were they doing? What was Dawson doing when she went to bring him to the basement? What was CORA doing? Specifically, specific. Stay on it. That's what Reddington does. And that's why it affects so many people, because they don't understand that he's weaponizing theatrics. That's what audiences feel from the great actors. They use their sensory, they use the environment, by using the sense of sight, by using the sense of smell, by using the sense of hearing, the sense of taste, the sense of touch. Those are the tools of acting. The foundation, the method. And we go back to those for each role an actor works on, going back to the 5 senses, because that's how we live, that's how we feel. Senses comes from Latin sentire, which means to feel, to perceive. That's how we go about our everyday. That's how we know where we are in the morning when we open our eyes. It's our sense of sight. We open our eyes, we're in bed. Then how do we know to get up from the bed? Because we feel where the bed ends, so we know where to turn and put our foot down, and then we feel the floor. Senses, touching, and then we see, and then we smell the coffee. I'm going to the kitchen, the sense of smell, and then I taste it. I'm hearing the sound of the air conditioning right now. We're surrounded, we're using our senses all the time. But in acting, great actors, and Reddington is using them at all times. Another thing, and this is probably the last thing because I didn't want to do this for such a long time. I don't even know. But I want to talk about the props that they brought. I mean, even the setup. Talk about the space and how important it is to be aware of the surroundings as an actor. And Kevin Reddington knows that. If you look at the defense's table, the whole setup that they have, which we can see better when watching, we can see the entire table of the prosecution, or I can, on the channels that I'm watching it. His table is set up with props. Did you see the books? Children books, albums are stacked on top of each other. And then there's something, and it says passion. Do you think that's by accident? Do you think that they just appeared out of nowhere? on the table? Or do you think he knows that that is conveying so much to the jurors, to the viewers, to us, I mean? Props, personal objects, it's called in acting. Personal objects are being used by actors to be able to go into those emotions, to be able to recreate those events from the past, combined with imagination. Touching a book. If I'm touching a book, if I imagine that I have a book in my hand, even without having them, but it's much better if I have one. If I had a book, if I have this envelope, for example, right here, just try it. Try it. Try this at home. Take something that's of significance to you, an object, anything. It can be a book, it can be a photograph that you haven't looked at in a long time. It can be a jewelry, a necklace, a ring, anything. And give yourself a few minutes to just use your sense of touch. You can even close your eyes if you don't want to use the sense of sight, and you can just touch it, and close your eyes for a moment. And you will see how the memory comes back to you of the person who gave you that, or of the event surrounding this specific significant object to you. That's what evokes emotions. So he knows to use props. So he brought those personal objects. On stage, the director sometimes will allow the actor to bring one significant object. And if the director doesn't want that personal object to be shown of the actor because the character might not have the same object in his storyline, then he would say you can have a significant object and you can put it in your pocket. So every time you put your hand in the pocket, you can feel it. So then that will help the actor to get to the emotion or to get to the place he or she needs to go to get to the humanity and the truth of the character. Truthfully, sincerely, without pretending. The setup was even brought for that reason, to gain empathy. And he's achieving that. And I just hope that more people would understand that acting is so much more about life learning and how to be smarter in observations, in making observations, in distinguishing people's behavior and see the truth in a trial and not be fooled by theatrics and forget about the lives of the three real victims, CORA, DAWSON, and CALLAN. I pray that tomorrow's closing arguments from the prosecutors will be guided by those beautiful angels in heaven, and justice will be served. Thank you so much. Kisses. Mwah.